Hi, and welcome to How to Analyze Poetry. This week we are going to have this lesson in 3 parts. Today we are going to discuss an introduction and the different forms of poetry. On Wednesday we will discuss sound devices and literary devices, and on Friday we will discuss how to actually analyze a poem. So let's get started. What is poetry and why is it important? According to Robert Frost, poetry is when an emotion has found its thought and the thought has found words. Poetry is a specific genre or type of literature. Poetry is a very expressive type of literature which uses words as a form of art. Poetry is a form of writing in which every word is important and full of meaning. Poetry is written in specific forms with lines and stanzas. Other genres are called prose, which uses sentences and paragraphs for structure. And finally, according to Edgar Allan Poe, poetry is the rhythmical creation of beauty in words. Now to look at some different types of poetry and what they require. There are many different styles of poetry and different structures and rules that poets use to create certain types of poetry. So let's look at what is form. How is a poem structured? The form of a poem is the appearance of the words on the page. A line is a group of words together on one line of a poem, and a stanza is a group of lines arranged together. So if you look at this poem, Dreams by Langston Hughes, this one has 1, 2, 3, 4 lines in the first stanza and 1, 2, 3, 4 lines in the second stanza. Here is a poem about a poem. A line of a poem does not have to be a sentence. A line of a poem can be a fragment of a sentence, with or without punctuation, with or without capital letters. It can spread itself out, taking time as it floats down the page. A line of a poem can go anywhere you want it to, but if you want to emphasize a word, put it all alone, like a star, or a bird, or a crab. So as you can see in this poem, the author used something called creative license. What that means is they don't follow the traditional rules of grammar. A lot of poets use punctuation and capitalization correctly, but a lot of poets just put it wherever they want or make it shaped any way they want, and they use punctuation to create emphasis so that the user knows how they intended the poem to sound. All right. So next we're going to discuss the difference between formal verse and free verse. Formal verse is also called metrical verse. It follows rules. If it's a certain type of poem, it has to have a certain number of stanzas. The stanzas may have to have a certain number of lines. It may have to follow a certain pattern or beat, and it may have rhyming patterns. Different styles of poetry follow different rules. But with free verse poems are poems that don't follow the rules. The poet chooses whatever they want to use in whatever manner they want to use it. They can be short or long, they can be about any topic, and they don't have a set number of words or syllables per line. Here's some examples of the different types of stanzas a poem might have. And as you can see, it simply follows the math vocabulary. A couplet is a 2-line stanza, a triplet is a 3-line stanza, a quatrain a 4, quintet a 5, sestet a 6-line, septet a 7-line, and an octave is an 8-line stanza. Next, we're going to discuss the difference between narrative poetry and lyrical poetry. Narrative poems are meant to tell a story. They often contain characters, they describe events, and they can be outlined on a plot line. Lyrical poems are the opposite. They are short poems, usually written in first person. They can express emotion or an idea or describe a scene or a person, but they do not tell a complete story. They are often very musical and rhythmic. And now we're going to look at some different types of poems or different styles of poems. There are many, many styles of poems. This is just a few of them just for us to explore. So the first one we will look at is an ode. An ode is a lyrical poem that praises or raves about a particular person, place, or thing. And here are a couple of examples. This one is a very serious poem. It's called Ode to Winter by Jan Allison. Thick blanket of snow snuggling the flower beds with a winter wrap. It's very short and sweet, but if you read it a couple times, you get an image in your head of exactly what she's thinking of or trying to explain. A thick blanket of snow snuggling the flower beds. How many times after a snow have you gone out and looked at that vision that she's talking about right now? Here's a more humorous poem, Ode to Ketchup by Fritz Purdom. For hamburgers, hot dogs, and French fried potatoes, add the sweet, savory sauce, a gift from tomatoes. Ketchup, ketchup, pour it thick. For bland foods, it does the trick. Scrambled eggs, just too plain. Ketchup adds that sweet tang. Steak a little too dry? That's when ketchup applies. Try adding ketchup in your sauce. Topping meatloaf, it is a boss. Beautifully red, rich, and thick, ketchup is food's favorite condiment. For finger foods, a tasty dip, so yummy you smack your lips. Ketchup is a sweet sensation, taste buds crave with anticipation. That magic that ketchup brings is that flavorful, wonderful zing. So he really likes ketchup. Another type of poem is a ballad. Now this is kind of the opposite. A ballad is a narrative poem, so it tells a story, and it's very song-like with short stanzas and a repeated chorus. These are some very famous examples of ballads, and you might want to check those out on your own time. We don't have time to read all those today. But some of the most famous ones are Casey at Bat, John Henry, The Cremation of Sam McGee, Paul Revere's Ride, and The Raven. Another type of poem is a limerick. I'm sure you've seen many of these before. They're kind of fun to read. A humorous 5-line rhyme poem that tells a quick little story. Limericks use a rhyme scheme of AABBA, meaning that the first 2 lines rhyme with each other, and then the next, usually shorter 2 lines, rhyme with each other, and then the last line rhymes with the first 2 lines. So here's a couple of examples. A limerick has 5 lines, not 9. Start by rhyming 2 lines real fine. Then rhyme another 2. It's pretty easy to do. Just don't forget the punchline. So if you notice, it has the rhyme scheme 9, fine, and line all rhyme, and then 2 and do rhyme. And here's another one. I'd rather have fingers than toes. I'd rather have ears than a nose. And as for my hair, I'm glad it's all there. I'll be awfully sad when it goes. And so here's another example where you have toes, nose, and goes that rhymes, and hair and there rhyme. So that is the structure or the pattern of a limerick. Another example is a haiku. This is a Japanese poem. It's written in 3 lines in the following pattern. It has 5 syllables, then 7 syllables, and then 5 syllables. And you have to remember, when you're talking about syllables, you're not talking about words. You're talking about the beat of the words. So here's one. It says, an old silent pond, a frog jumps into the pond, splash, silence again. And so if you look at the first line, you have to clap out the beats. It'll say, an old silent pond. So it has 5 beats, even though it has 4 words. And the second one, a frog jumps into the pond. So that's 7 syllables. And then splash, silence again. So it has 5 syllables. Next, this is an example of a concrete poem. Concrete poems, the poet arranges the words to look like a picture of the topic that they're writing about. So as you can see here, this is a poem about a flame, and it's actually shaped in the form of a flame. Poetry is like flames, which are swift and elusive, dodging realization. Sparks like words on the paper leap and dance in the flickering firelight. The fiery tongues formless and shifting. Shapes tease the imagination. Yet for those who see, through their mind's eye, they burn up the page. All right, this is an example of an elegy, a poem that expresses the sadness of the author over another person's death. This is probably one of the most famous elegies. And this is from the poem, O Captain, My Captain. O Captain, my Captain, our fearful trip is done. The ship has weathered every wrack, the prize we sought is won. The port is near, the bell I hear, the people all exulting, while follow eyes the steady keel, the vessel grim and daring. This is just a small excerpt. It's a very long poem, but as you can see, here's a little bit of background. This was written by Walt Whitman, and he wrote this poem after Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. He refers to Lincoln as the captain of the ship, and that's he's making Lincoln the symbol for America. And so if you, in your own time, you can read this, but that gives you kind of a little background that he wrote this poem after Abraham Lincoln died, and it was somebody that he admired and he wanted to honor. Another type of poem is an epic. This is a very long tale. It's often written as a novel, which describes a hero and their journey and their adventures. Some of the most famous epics are the Iliad and the Odyssey from Homer, Dante's Inferno, Beowulf, and the Song of Hiawatha. A sonnet is another famous type of poem. There are different types of sonnets, but the most famous sonnet is the Shakespearean sonnet, simply because William Shakespeare wrote many, many of them. This is a poem that follows a lot of rules. It has to have a certain number of lines, it has to have a certain number of syllables in each line, and it has to have a certain rhyme pattern. So it has 14 lines with a fixed rhyme scheme. It has 5 sets of unstressed syllables followed by stressed syllables for a 10-syllable line. So lots and lots of rules. You don't have to remember all that, but just know that a sonnet has a very specific set of rules. And if you're analyzing it or if you're trying to write one, you need to research those rules and follow those rules, or else it won't be a sonnet. Next. All right, that's it. So on Wednesday, we're going to discuss more about the sound devices and the literary devices. And then on Friday, we're going to discuss more on how to actually analyze poems. And for now, you can work on your vocabulary and your video. And I will see you on Wednesday.